Well, there was some rare good news for the world's largest economy late last week. The U.S. economy began growing again in July, August, and September after more than a year of decline. U.S. gross domestic product, or GDP, grew at an annual pace of 3.5% in the third quarter. President Barack Obama called the report welcome news, but says the nation has a long way to go. Proof of that came Friday when government figures showed U.S. consumers spent less in September. And joining us now to talk about what all these numbers mean is VOA's economic editor, Jim Randle. Hi, Jim.
Hi, how are you?
Well, great to see you and great to have you on the show for the first time. Obviously, this is very good news, but really, does it spell an end to the recession?
Well, that's an interesting question. Certainly, the data is heading in a positive direction. Economists will tell you that the classic definition of a recession is 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. Well, nobody but an economist would say something like that. What they mean is if the economy shrinks for 6 months, they think that's a recession. There's a lot of technical mumbo-jumbo, but clearly having a quarter of growth is good, and probably the recession is over.
Now, a lot of this growth has been spurred by business and government, but consumers, the U.S. consumers, are still really holding tight to their purses and wallets. Is this going to have an impact in the long term? Absolutely.
About 70% of the U.S. economy, which is the world's largest, 70% of the world's economy is driven by consumer demand. So economists and everybody else watches consumer spending very, very closely. It's a continuing worry. One of the reasons consumer spending is not very strong is that there's high unemployment. Unemployment numbers, new numbers will come out this Friday. Right now it's about 9-something%, and it'll probably go over 10% sometime next year. So that's a worry, and that's the reason that consumers are worried, and that's the reason they're spending less and they're spending carefully, which may not be such a bad thing after all.
Now, of course, outside the U.S. borders, too, around the world, everybody's greeting this news with a lot of excitement. What does it mean for, say, a continent like Africa? How does it start, kind of also benefiting from this growth?
Well, the simplest, most direct way is that when the world's largest economy grows, it increases demand for all kinds of things. Oil from Nigeria and Angola, for coffee, for tea, for all the many things that are produced in so many places in Africa. Increased demand means increased prices. Even if the products are not sold directly in the United States, increased demand means they get sold somewhere and there's a subsidy. Anyway, it's good news.
Very briefly, Jim, how is this kind of economic crisis prevented again, and what is the U.S. doing to make sure that it doesn't happen?
Well, the economy goes in cycles up and down, so there's always going to be some ups and downs. But there's a movement afoot in Congress and elsewhere to try to improve supervision and make some of the silly things that were done on Wall Street less likely and less damaging. We'll have to see how that plays out, because there's a lot of political bickering going on that.
Well, thank you so much, Jim Randle, VOA's economic editor. Thanks for being on our show today.
Happy to do it.